All right, TikTok, time to rock. They got these congressional hearings going on where they bring in the presidents of these universities, Harvard, MIT, um, Penn, so University of
Pence.
Pennsylvania, and they brought all these presidents in, and they're like, "Hey, you guys need to condemn genocide." Calls for genocide, and the presidents of these universities are like, "I don't know. Kind of depends on the context." And everyone in Congress like, wait, what? What did you say? Yeah, it depends on the context. Takeaway from what the presidents of these universities were saying was it only violates our policies once it turns into conduct. In other words, the saying it, the calling for genocide, as long as you're not doing it. And there was one point when a congresswoman, when the president of, I think it was president of Harvard, was like, it depends on if it turns into, no, it was the president of Penn. She was saying, only when it becomes conduct is that not allowed. Then it's not allowed. And then she goes, what do you mean conduct? You mean like when someone actually does the genocide? That's when it becomes that's when it's against your policies. So anyway, it was.
It is very strange. I mean, I saw much of those clips, I believe, and the reaction, of course, of the questioner. It is really bizarre. We have to have a look at that.
These are some of the students who were brought before Congress to explain to Congress what's going on college campuses if you're Jewish.
And first, before we head out, I want to introduce Talia Khan from MIT to share her story. Talia.
Thank you so much. My name is Talia Khan. I am an undergraduate alumna of MIT and a current graduate student at MIT. I am the daughter of a Jewish mother and an Afghan Muslim immigrant father. I am the proud president of the MIT Israel Alliance, and I am a Jewish student currently immersed in an extremely toxic anti-Semitic atmosphere at MIT. The MIT administration, namely President Sally Kornbluth, has failed to address the crisis of rampant anti-Semitism on campus. There is a radical anti-Israel group at MIT called the CAA. In recent weeks, the CAA's anti-Semitic rhetoric has shifted the culture on campus to such an extreme of intolerance that 70% of MIT's Jewish students polled feel forced to hide their identities and perspectives.
Whoa, you catch that?
70, what percent?
She said 70% of Jewish students at MIT are now hiding the fact that they're Jews. Interesting.
I mean, it shouldn't be coming to that, right? So people talk so much about all the time about how I don't know, never again, we can't allow such things, no hate, no this, no that, but they focused so much on other kinds of hate that apparently when it comes to this one, to the actual one that we really experienced some big disaster with in recent history, they somehow let it happen again. It's so bizarre. It doesn't make sense.
And this really, I would say, we've talked about this before, but this really makes a slam dunk case for why Jews need their own nation, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So this was the idea before World War II. That was the criticism of Zionism back then was, what are you guys talking about? You're in all kinds of countries. Your countries will protect you, man. What are you complaining about? And then, no, turns out what was regarded as one of the most culturally advanced nations the world had ever seen just started rounding them up in cattle cars and taking them and sticking them in ovens and so on. And so then they were like, guys, you see why we kind of need our own spot here? Can we just have one little spot that's just ours where we're actually allowed to defend ourselves and we don't have to depend on other people who might put us into camps, not depend on them for our safety? And then so you've got Israel now and you got people complaining about Israel and calling for the destruction of Israel. And then the thought is, well, you don't need your own nation. You could be in other places. And you just see it's like a switch can go off and everyone starts saying, let's round up the Jews and massacre them. Pretty wild stuff, man.
It is really insane. It's like in pop culture we are told repeatedly. We were repeatedly told about this. They repeatedly tell you about this, and they do all of these slogans. And whenever somebody talks about bigotry and demonizing and otherizing and dehumanizing others and racism and all of that, people always go to the one reference that we have. They always go to Nazis. They say, you are Nazis. You are acting like Nazis. Literally a Nazi. Literally like Hitler. Just like Hitler, and so on. But then when it comes to the actual victims of those Nazis that everyone always wants to talk about, that everyone compares everyone to, then suddenly they don't care about protecting them just as much. They care more about protecting those who want to attack those people, who want to attack those Jews, those victims. It is. I mean, you see it right now. There is an insane amount of anti-Jewish, attitudes and behaviors on social media in the world, on the left, also on the right, but on the left, where it supposedly is not expected to happen. That's supposedly the anti-racist, anti-oppression, pro accepting and compassion side. But to them, this is acceptable. Hating Jews is acceptable. Blaming Jews is acceptable. Calling for genocide against Jews is acceptable. Putting them in danger is acceptable. Because, you know why? Because Jews happen to be a Western culture now. They are white now. So they don't get the whole privilege of being considered a group that needs your help, your compassion.
And it's the creepiest part to me is how people have been so thoroughly conditioned to be outraged at whatever they're told to be outraged at any given moment. That basically, if you're a student on a college campus, you wake up one day and it's hey, this is the thing that you're supposed to be outraged about today. And if you're not, you're evil, and we're gonna marginalize you. And so you want to be part of the correct group. You want to be part of the good group. Then here's what you're outraged about today. And then a week later, it's something else they're supposed to be outraged about. But they've been so thoroughly conditioned that they can just find out. Okay, now you're mad at Jews. Wait, what? Now you're mad at Jews, we said. And they'll just roll with it.
An Israeli student whose identity and personal info was sold online for a bounty has not left his dorm room in weeks out of fear due to death threats. For my part, I was forced to leave my study group for my doctoral exams halfway through the semester because my group members told me that the people at the Nova Music Festival deserved to die because they were partying on stolen land.
We heard that before, right?
Yeah,
we heard that before. I read that stuff before as well.
So she had to leave her study group because they were saying that those people deserved to die. People who died on October 7th.
Postdoc at MIT said that Jewish Israelis want to enslave the world in a global apartheid system. He falsely claimed that Israel harvests Palestinian organs and implied that the, quote, average Israeli is a Nazi. The DEI officer of his department replied by telling us that nothing he said was hate speech and that the organ harvesting conspiracy theory was, quote, confirmed.
What?
Day after day, the MIT administration has failed to enforce its own rules on anti-Semitic actors, such as the interfaith chaplain intimidating Jewish students, DEI staff publicly declaring that Israel has no right to exist, faculty dismissing student concerns for their safety by telling them that if they are scared, they should just go back to Israel.
Right. Do you hear what they're being told? If you're scared here, if you students are scared here on the campus of MIT and you got a problem, if you're uncomfortable, go back to Israel. Wait, what? I thought Israel didn't have a right to exist, people.
And by the way, you know what would happen? You know the response you would get if you told an Arab to just go back to your country, right?
Mm-hmm. And that is the great hypocrisy in all of this, especially with the presidents talking about, well, it's only when it turns into conduct that would actually commit genocide that it becomes a problem. They would never tolerate any of this
We will
about
stop the
Muslims.
genocide. We will condemn it after it happens, of course. Yeah.
Matter of fact, I don't know if I pulled this clip up, but it's one of the clips I saw. There was a congressman who said because the presidents were complaining about anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and we've got both problems. And the congressman, he called them out, and he just goes, do you have students? Do you have large numbers of students gathering around calling for a nation of Muslims to be destroyed? Do you have that? Is that a thing? And he just broke it down. So are you actually comparing these things? One calling for an extermination of a group of people and the destruction of a state. What do you have that's comparable to that going on about Muslims? And of course, nothing. It's always fake.
Now, so the thing is also when they say they are on stolen land, that's why they deserve to die. That's why they deserve the attacks that are coming for them.
Which Muslims are not on stolen land?
Yes,
Tell me that.
Exactly.
Name them.
Exactly. But also, it's not even true that it's stolen land. That's complete nonsense and ahistorical, and shows a great misunderstanding of history, of very basic history. But even if we were to assume that it is true, that they have a point, that it is stolen land, that they are on stolen land, by that same standard, you as an American are also on stolen land.
Mm-hmm.
By that standard, you are also on stolen land.
All these college students are on stolen land.
Yeah, so they all deserve to be killed then, right?
Yeah, that's the takeaway that I get from them.
God, this is ridiculous.
All right.
CAA protesters blocking the hallways, storming the offices of the MIT Israel internship offices, and harassing the staff and faculty there, and inviting dangerous outsiders to campus to join them in yelling hateful and violent chants. This is the same climate of anti-Semitism that has led to massacres of Jews throughout the centuries. This is not...
And by the way, for me, that's the reason we keep talking about. This is exactly the sort of situations that led to massacres of Jews in the past. We can all be worried about a hypothetical massacre against some group that someone's criticizing or something like that. With Jews, it just it happens over and over and over again down through history. And so when people start saying the exact same things that were used in the past to justify massacres of Jews, you kind of have to take that pretty seriously when it happens.
Just harassment. This is our lives on the line. The MIT administration has punted disciplinary processes to a faculty committee on discipline, which has thus far not received a single one of our complaints. MIT admin has even failed to staff a new task force against hate, which will dually combat anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. This atmosphere is intolerable. Jewish students do not believe that the MIT administration has done an adequate job to make students feel safe on campus. President Kornbluth, please let me go back to being a scientist. Let me go back to being a student.
Dang.
I don't want to have to keep advocating for Jewish student safety on campus. It's not my job. It's your job. Please do your job and act now.
Ouch.
And if you can't, I'm asking Congress to do it for you. Thank you.
Ouch.
Whoa.
Doesn't that suck? You go to MIT to be a scientist, and then you can't even go to your study group because they're saying that Jews deserve what happens to them and so on. And now you have to be testifying before Congress about what's happening to Jews. It's like, hey, I went there to become a scientist, not to do this. Could you please fix this? Could you please fix it to where, wow.
So there are no safe spaces for Jews, I assume, then.
Nope. Can you imagine that? I mean, we heard about safe spaces in the past, but it was like safe spaces from hearing anything you didn't like.
Uh-huh.
And so there's a space over there that you can run to and you won't hear anything you don't like over there. But we're to the point where like Jews are actually going to need safe spaces on campuses to protect them from mobs who want to destroy them.
Do they even? I mean, do they at least do like trigger warnings before they say these things? Like a trigger warning: all Israelis deserve to be killed, like that.
But it's crazy because, I mean, students complain about microaggressions, that you're saying all these things that are like these microaggressions. These are actual calls for genocide. That's not
Yeah.
not a microaggression. Wow. All right. This is wild stuff here.
My name is Bella Ingber. I'm a junior at NYU, and I'm going to try to answer the following question for you from my personal experiences. What is it like to be a Jew at NYU? Being a Jew at NYU is walking to class and passing torn and defaced posters of innocent hostages with the words occupier and murderer written across their faces. It is going to Bope's library to study and being interrupted by unauthorized protests where students and faculty call for a globalized intifada revolution, an incitement to violence against Jews everywhere, and a call for the annihilation of the Jewish state and my friends and family who live there. Being a Jew at NYU...
Hold up. You know, Intifada, some idiots in the West, or some idiots throughout the world who sympathize with the idea of rebellion, standing up against justice, standing up against the oppressor, and all of that. These people often think of the Intifada also as something like some rebellion to bring justice. It's a noble thing to stand up and advocate for. It feels just like in one of those movies when we try to save the world by going out and protesting. The Intifada, the idea behind the Intifadas were not a seeking for justice. They were not a rebellion to just be treated better and be free and independent and all of that. The idea behind the Intifadas, which by the way didn't go very very nicely, where that Israel in its entirety is an illegal state, that Jews do not deserve to live in this land, that this land is holy, that it is meant for the Arabs, for the Muslims, and that the Palestinians must now rise up to overcome and to defeat them and annihilate the Zionists and the Zionist entity. To completely destroy and get rid of them. It's not a quest for justice or for rebellion, for freedom because you are so oppressed. The only oppression that they see there is that Israel exists, that they can't take that. That is considered oppression. So it is directly a violent call to annihilate the other side. You could just as well stand up and support a separatist, I don't know, Nazi movement that says we're sick of these people existing. We must rise up and annihilate them completely because this is our land. It's the very same thing. This is just ridiculous, man.
Yeah, and as far as the consistency part, I mean, can you imagine these university presidents putting up with it if Muslim students were walking to class and there's like death to Muslims spray painted on the sides of buildings and stuff going to their classes, and there are protesters calling for the annihilation of Muslim nations and so on. They wouldn't put up with that for 5 seconds. It would be crushed instantly. But they put up with it when it's about Jews, and that's what's concerning here.
Is being surrounded by students and faculty who support the murder and kidnapping of Jews because, after all, as they say, resistance is justified when people are occupied. It is being surrounded by social justice warriors and self-proclaimed feminists whose calls for justice end abruptly when the rape victims are Jews. Being a Jew.
You've seen that hashtag Me Too unless you're a Jew? I've seen that a bunch of times.
Yes.
Yeah. That if you're a Jewish victim, well, you deserve it, or you can't be trusted, and so we're not going to believe you.
And by the way, we have now overwhelmingly significantly more evidence of sexual assaults, of rape cases during October 7 by Hamas and Palestinian individuals and groups than we ever had for any of the Me Too celebrities that people stood up for and advocated for. It's like we have tons of it now. We have eyewitnesses, we have first responders, rescue teams, we have statements from interrogations from Hamas members themselves. there's just so much. We have camera footage where they refer to Israeli girls, Israeli women as concubines, and so on. So this is ridiculous that they will then just completely disregard that because, well, it's Israel, I don't care. I don't care. It's the oppressed people who are doing that. They are being forced to go and rape the Jewish people.
At NYU has meant being physically assaulted in NYU's library by a fellow student while I was wearing an American Israeli flag and having my attacker still roam freely throughout the campus.
Dang, so she's been attacked and her attacker still walks around campus like nothing's happened because they won't punish.
Being a Jew at NYU is experiencing how diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a value that NYU extends to its Jewish students. Since October 7th, the unmistakable anti-Semitism that I've experienced on campus is reminiscent of the Jew hatred I've heard about from my grandparents, Holocaust survivors, who experienced firsthand the deafening silence of their neighbors in Poland and Germany when the Nazis first rose to power. As anti-Semitic rhetoric and actions became more and more acceptable, their communities' shops were looted, their synagogues defaced, and finally, their families were taken away and perished in concentration camps.
She's actually making she's making a really important point there that people that, leading up to World War II, it became clear what the Germans were doing to the Jews, what their intentions were, and their neighbors sat back and did nothing. And it just starts off with their stores and so on being looted, and their neighbors do nothing and don't stand against it. And she's pointing out the same thing is going on right now. It's not to that extent, but it's the same thing where if it's against a Jew, we're just going to sit back and watch and not do anything. And it's like some of the most prestigious universities in the US and in the world. And they're just, you're Jewish. You shouldn't be complaining. It's nuts, man. It's nuts.
If this led to a massive genocide, they would be like, "How did this happen?
We don't know.
How could this happen? We have no idea."
And it's crazy.
We could have fixed it. Yeah,
that's what I mean. It's crazy. Every generation looks back at previous generations and going, "How did they let that happen?" And then when you're doing it, it's like, "Oh, okay, this is how it happens."
I should be studying for my upcoming finals. I should be taking in every moment, every experience as an undergraduate student in my senior year of college.
You can't, you're Jewish.
So while I should not be here today, I am. Because 36 hours ago, I, along with most of campus, sought refuge in our rooms. As classmates and professors chanted proudly for the genocide of Jews while igniting smoke bombs and defacing school property.
Students and professors.
The neighboring university's president immediately released a statement describing this as a brazen display of anti-Semitism. He went on saying, "Silence in the face of last night's demonstration of anti-Semitism and hate near our doorstep is not an option for me." Well, the doorstep of the neighboring university is in fact Penn. And in fact, Penn's president did choose silence. The neighboring university's president swiftly denounced the incident, and yet our president cannot. Because the glorious October 7th, and you're a dirty little Jew, you deserve to die, are words said not by Hamas, but by my classmates and professors.
Dang. This is nuts. You can actually pick a university. You can pick a wonderful, amazing university and go up to a Jewish student and say, "Hey, tell us how things are going on here." And it's stuff like this. They have to hide in their rooms. They have to hide their identities. And they're being told they deserve to die.
Because despite all of this, I am adamant and hopeful that we will not accept, least of all embrace, this horrific new normal on college campuses today. On October 7th, Israel was attacked. Since October 7th, American Jews have been under attack. My name is Eyal Yacobi, and I am a proud American studying at the University of Pennsylvania. I love Penn.
Dang. So the girl who spoke first, she was at MIT. Then a girl spoke from NYU, and this is at University of Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And this must really suck. So I mean, this is insane, because these students testify right in front of these the presidents of the universities about the stuff that's going on. And then when the presidents of the university, I mean, he's a student at University of Pennsylvania, and he's talking about the president of the University of Pennsylvania doing nothing. She's sitting right there. And then when she's asked if it's okay to call for genocide against Jews on her campus, she's like, well, as long as it doesn't turn into actual conduct, actually genociding them, we believe in freedom of expression. Wild stuff, man.
Maybe she was playing a game on her phone or something.
That would be messed up. Like, oh, yeah, I believe in freedom of expression.
Yeah.
I've wanted to attend this university since before I can remember. I'm here because the Penn I attend today is unrecognizable from the Penn I once used to know. Penn, once renowned for groundbreaking discoveries like the mRNA vaccine, is now a chilling landscape of hatred and hostility. Our university, revered for its pursuit of knowledge, has devolved into an arena where Jewish students tiptoe through their days, uncertain and unsafe. The situation at Penn has escalated into a full-blown crisis, with students openly asserting their intentions to proceed with plans with or without university permission. During COVID, strict guidelines governed everything from class attendance and graduation walks. Yet now, when students and faculty defy policies to intimidate Jewish students, where is the same resolute enforcement?
Yeah, so he's pointing, this is another issue with the consistency. He's pointing out, wait a minute, when it was COVID, you guys were very careful about enforcing every single little rule.
Yes.
But now, even if people are breaking the rules, even if people are openly breaking rules, you don't say a word. Why?
Well, it's just Jews.
Because it's against Jews. It's against Jews.
It's
For
just
the past 3 weeks inside Houston Hall, our student center, an anti-Semitic headquarters has been erected with signs spreading Hamas propaganda. The organizers, both Penn-affiliated and not, were initially asked to leave as they are trespassing on campus property. Well, 3 weeks later, they are still sleeping there, and countless Jewish students have been harassed, yet the anti-Semitic dormitory remains. Clearly, both a disregard for school policies and permission to disregard them by a university unwilling to do anything. Not only are tensions palpable, but there have also been materialized actions taken to intimidate and harm students. A bomb threat against Hillel, a swastika spray painted, the Hillel and Chabad houses vandalized, a professor posting the armed wing of Hamas's logo on Facebook, a Jewish student accosted, Jews are Nazis, etched adjacent to Penn's Jewish fraternity house. Why doesn't the university...
Jews are Nazis. Who were we watching who talked about that? Talking about, like, people understand what a sore spot the Nazis, bringing up Nazis are, and then calling Jews Nazis. And they're putting that beside the Chabad house at the University of Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
So they put it on the side of the Chabad house. Jews are Nazis there. This gets 2.7% of me in an uproar, man.
Yeah.
behold
According to one test, it's like 12% of me, but it's probably wrong. But still, I feel
No, roll with that, man.
Okay, I will.
You're way more Jewish than I am then.
Okay.
of such acts accountable. Is the university fearful that they may offend those who wish to intimidate and harass their fellow students? Penn's ambivalence fuels a crisis that has shattered my academic sanctuary.
Dang.
Policies meant to safeguard us have become hollow promises. And let us be clear, if they fail Jewish students today, tomorrow they will fail the rest of us. Nonetheless, I refuse to go back to 1939 when Jews had to hide their religious symbols and hide who they are due to the intimidation and harassment of us.
Jews are held to some insane standard that we would not hold anyone else to. Hey, there's just a massive terrorist attack on you. You go into people who are actually hiding among civilian women and children because they want to maximize civilian casualties, and you still end up with a civilian death to soldier death of around 2 to 1, which is, I mean, that's pretty common. That's pretty common in wars. And Jews are condemned for that. And they're basically told, since you're getting those kinds of numbers and there's no way around it, if you're actually going after Hamas, what you really need to do is leave Hamas alone. Should have been a ceasefire right after the terrorist attack, right after they came and slaughtered a bunch of your people and then ran away with all those hostages. Should have been a ceasefire. Let them get away with it. That's what they're told. No one would ever hold any other nation to that kind of standard, but that's a standard they're held to. But then with Muslims, it's the flip. It's the complete reverse. It doesn't matter what you do, how horrible it is. We will not hold you to any standard at all. There is no standard that we will hold you to. If you're Hamas, there is no standard whatsoever that we will hold you to. If you're a Muslim student calling for the annihilation of Jews, we will not hold you to even like university standards of conduct. We're not holding you to anything. And so you're Jewish, we hold you to this standard that no one could possibly live up to in the world today and function. I mean, and still exist as a nation. And if you're on the other side, you're not held to any standard at all. Interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. So this is like a little compilation of what the presidents said as far as like their opening remarks, and you got some clips on it. Then they get kind of cross-examined by congressmen, and that's where you end up. That's where they end up acknowledging that calls for genocide are actually okay, as long as it doesn't lead to conduct. Well, they're not okay. They'll say, yes, those are bad, but it's okay as far as our policies go. So this woman is the president of Harvard University.
Felt the bonds of our community strain. In response, I have sought to confront hate while preserving free expression. This is difficult work, and I know that I have not always gotten it right. The free exchange of ideas is the foundation upon which Harvard is built, and safety and well-being are the prerequisites for engagement in our community. Without both of these things, our teaching and research mission founder.
As a student of Constitution.
So that's her. This is Liz McGill, I forget which school she was from. I think MIT.
Democracy. I know that we need both safety and free expression for universities and ultimately democracy to thrive. In these times, these competing principles can be difficult to balance, but I am determined to get it right. And we must get this right. The stakes are too high.
Yeah.
Penn would not be what it is without its strong Jewish community, past, present, and future. While I deplore...
Yeah, so notice they're all... This is what's creepy. If you were to listen to them, you're like, oh, you have to keep students safe and respect freedom of expression. That's pretty much what I would say. But if you look at what they're actually doing, at what they mean by this, that's where things are really messed up. And you look at the hypocrisy. They don't take this into account. They don't take their freedom of expression concerns. Deja vu disciple here puts up, but you can't call someone the wrong pronoun, right? Yeah, that's when if someone is calling someone the wrong pronoun, that's when all of a sudden freedom of expression goes out the window, and all that matters is that you are literally killing this person by calling him or her the wrong pronoun. So yeah, the hypocrisy is a pretty big issue here, but they're all emphasizing, nope, when it comes to calling for genocide against Jews, we have to be very careful to protect freedom of expression.
All hateful speech, anti-Semitic speech remains in America protected. Free speech stands at the core of the liberal arts education, an education which almost...
Yeah, like 50 years ago. Now, my goodness. Yeah, one of the congressmen points out that Harvard ranked dead last among American colleges in terms of freedom of speech on campus and not being crushed for your ideas. They crush you. They destroy you. If they find out you made the wrong tweet, they take away your acceptance to the university. They'll fire you for having the wrong idea. And so they're dead last. And all of a sudden, all these universities, well, when there's calling for genocide against Jews, we really, really need to protect freedom of expression on our campuses. Wow.
Every member of Congress benefited from when they were students.
Those who want us to shut down protest language are in effect arguing for a speech code. But in practice, speech codes do not work. Problematic speech...
Are they giving these responses after they just heard what these what these students
I don't know
said?
I don't know what the order is, but my goodness. Matter of fact, there is the full video that was posted, so we could actually go and find exactly what the order is. But I mean, yeah, you're correct. If they just heard these students, in other words, it's one thing if these college presidents spoke first and then the students spoke their minds. If they just listen to the students and what they're going through as Jews on their campuses, and they're like, but calls for genocide. We have to protect the freedom of expression of the people we're calling for genocide.
But even if it's even if they didn't hear what the students said, even if they said these things before that, still that would just mean that they are quite clueless of what is going on. I mean, we have seen it we see it on social media. I mean, people outside the whole discussion are exposed to what is happening, to all the slogans, the speeches that are given at these universities. These people should have some awareness of what is happening at the places that they are, speaking for.
This is wild stuff. All right.
It's to be countered with other speech and with education. And we are doing that. However, the right to free speech does not extend to harassment, discrimination, or incitement to violence in our community.
It doesn't extend to incitement to violence, but they're doing something interesting here. And there's a parallel with what like social media does, especially with you. When they say you can't have incitement to violence, they're not talking about like calls for the annihilation of Israel and so on. That's fine. It's in the American legal sense of you have to be, targeting an individual with some sort of like violence, like calling for this person to be killed. That's when you've crossed the line, according to what these presidents of universities are saying. So if you're just calling for the future destruction of Israel, that's fine. If you're saying, hey, let's kill this Jew, then they would step in and say, oh, that's too much. You're calling for, a specific Jew to be killed. This reminds me of the situation with like Ali Dawa, right? On social media. So it's something similar in that if we just hurt someone's feelings, we're accused of hate speech. If we criticize Muhammad, we're accused of like hate speech and so on. Meanwhile, you've got Ali Dawa actually saying, hey, we're working towards a state when we're going to be watching as people like you are executed. Yeah. You've got Daniel Hakikachu, Jake, the Muslim metaphysician. They all agree that you'd be killed if they get their precious Islamic state that they want. They agree that I'd be killed for blasphemy. You'd actually be killed for the apostasy and the blasphemy. So you got multiple death sentences on you.
I'll be killed twice.
Yeah, you've got Sheikh Asim al-Hakim explaining jihad. Say, hey, Muslims, we're not strong enough now to take over the world, but right now we need to be preparing, and we need to keep preparing for the next couple decades until we get to a point where we're strong enough, where we got the numbers, and we can go door to door telling people either convert, pay us money, pay us off, or we're executing you. They're all allowed to do this on social media. Why? Because they're not saying, hey, yes, we're gonna kill you right now. It's sort of off in the distance. We're going to kill you and all ex-Muslims and all everyone who blasphemes and everyone who won't pay us or convert. Yeah. We're eventually going to kill you all. And these universities are basically saying the same thing. Yeah, as long as it's like kind of vague that you're calling for these people to be annihilated, we'll let that slide. If you call for violence against a specific person in a specific context at a specific time, then you're in trouble. It should have been brought up instantly. Wait a minute. So if you're saying, if someone's walking across campus and starts saying that trans people need to be wiped out at some point in the future, and we need to work towards a trans-free society, that would be okay on your campus as long as they're not calling for violence against a specific trans individual? No, they have zero concept of consistency. It's wild stuff. Christoph says, if someone with low melanin used the word beginning with the letter N, they wouldn't worry about specific individuals' rules before throwing them out. Yeah, and that's the thing. See, if a university basically announced as a policy that they're going to be maximum free expression on that campus, and they announced that, and students who go there understand it's a free-for-all. You're on your own. No one's stepping in. It's just like the rest of the United States, and you say what you want. If you don't like it, then avoid that person who's saying it. If a university actually wanted to do that, I would say, okay, you're announcing that that's your policy. People who go there understand it's a free-for-all. People are going to be saying all sorts of messed up things, and if it's legal, they're going to allow it. I would understand that. But yeah, it's these universities that like crush anyone who says the wrong thing. They set out to destroy that person's life for saying the wrong thing. But anyone who's calling for genocide against Jews gets a free pass. There's something wrong going on there.
Yeah.
Please give your opinions on the stance by the wokies that say, I am not anti-Semitic, but I am anti-Zionist. Do they have a point or are they wrong? You can have a position where you don't just hate Jews and you object to something that Israel does. You can hold that position. That's not really the position, because notice, you can say, I'm just against this atrocity that Israel's committing. Okay, if that's the only atrocity in the world that you ever focus on, and there are way bigger, way worse atrocities going on, then it doesn't look like your problem is really with Israel. It just looks like you have a different view of Jews. That's what it looks like. So I would say in general, most of the people who say, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just anti-Zionist, they're actually anti-Semitic, but they want to justify their anti-Semitism. So they just say, I'm just against Zionism.
Yeah. Plus, people like to somehow make it look like Zionism is something different. It's like some extremist, violent, hateful attitude that they can point at and separate from Jewishness or Jewish existence, and then they're like, no, not anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist. First of all, lots of people who say this are very quick to say something incredibly anti-Jewish as soon as you start arguing and press them. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, what does Zionism actually stand for, and what exactly do they hate about Zionism? They make it look like what they hate is this oppression, this racism or something. But Zionism is basically the Jewish right to have their state, which they obtained. When people say this stuff, what they're basically saying is, well, I'm not against Jews. I'm just against them having, the Jewish land. They should not have it. They should go live somewhere else. They should become subjects again. It's just bizarre. And also,
and notice, going along the lines of people who say they're just anti-Zionist, notice you're basically saying the Jews are the only people in the world who aren't allowed to have their own spot at all. Period. Yeah. Never, under any circumstances, they're not allowed to have it.
Or you'll say, well, they can have a land, but just not here, just somewhere else. Okay, yeah. So you want them to steal someone else's land? Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, notice you can't say where are they going to get? Where are they just going to get land? Are they going to go buy some? Because they were buying land in what is now Israel. They were doing that before the establishment of the nation. They were buying land there. There were some that had always been there. There are some who came and bought land there, and all of that is condemned. All of that is condemned. They're not allowed to have any of that. Even if a Jew went and bought. And by the way, if you're saying, but that they bought this land or something like that, they're not allowed to have that. They are also kicked out of a number of Muslim countries. They had land there. They're kicked out. They had to go. And they're kicked out of a lot more land than they got with the nation of Israel. And so, notice it's just Jews aren't allowed to have their own land. Okay, if you're saying Jews aren't allowed to have any spot where they can actually defend themselves against the jihadis who want to slaughter them, I'd say your problem is with Jews and not just with Zionists. And that if they did anything else, you'd be complaining about what they were doing somewhere else.
Yes. Also, the vast majority of Jews are Zionists. So you can't, and also, again, just what you brought up, buying land. That was the majority of how the Jews or how the Zionists acquired land in the region. Up until the founding of Israel, the majority was by buying the land, and then also by being given land which was not owned by anyone else, or which was not occupied by anyone else, which was under British control. It was given to them because it was a project to establish a Jewish homeland. But the buying was considered offensive and was considered stealing the homes, because how dare you come there and how dare you spend your wealth and actually acquire land to live there. That's what they refer to as stealing, because the Jews didn't, forcibly take anyone's land away. At least not until the Arab Civil War started in 1947. And not until after 1948, the Arabs declared war in Israel, as a result of which Israel did take the homes of those who left, and also expelled others and let others remain. But this was all after a war that was declared against them. The Jews did not come and just steal land; they bought land. So what they're basically saying when they accuse them of stealing for that is, if I move somewhere and I have money, I have wealth, and I decide to buy a bunch of land or buy a certain house, the people who lived there before could come and say, you're stealing my house, you're stealing my land. I live there. You don't deserve to do this. You don't get to just buy this and live there. Yeah, okay, great. Let's just do the same. Let's apply the same standards nowadays to real estate, and let's go and kill everyone who buys the place that we want to live.
You can't apply the rule to anyone else, AP. The rules only apply to Jews. Have you learned nothing yet?
Dr. Gay, a Harvard student calling for the mass murder of African Americans is not protected free speech at Harvard, correct?
Our commitment to free speech...
It's a yes or no question. Is that corrected? Is that okay for students to call for the mass murder of African Americans at Harvard? Is that protected free speech?
Our commitment to free speech...
It's a yes or no question. Let me ask you this. You are president of Harvard, so I assume you're familiar with the term intifada, correct?
And by the way, notice what she does right here. She wants to say, hey, like their position, which they're calling out, is we want to maximize freedom of expression. So as long as you're not actually, engaging in it, then we have to let it slide. And so she leads off with, what if the situation were a little different and, this other group was being, called to, for extermination or for killing or something like, what would the situation be there? And the president won't even answer because the president knows, oops, if I say that, then I'm screwed on this other issue, right? My hypocrisy will be exposed. So she can't even say, no, you can't call for the extermination of black people.
I've heard that term, yes.
And you understand that the use of the term intifada in the context of the Israeli-Arab conflict is indeed a call for violent armed resistance against the state of Israel, including violence against civilians and the genocide of Jews. Are you aware of that?
By the way, that if people don't understand the relevance here, the calls on college campuses are to globalize the intifada, right? To globalize the armed resistance against Israel and Jews. But notice what that means. If you're saying globalize it, so do it over here too. What are you talking about? You're not dealing with Israel over here. What are you talking about? What could you possibly mean by globalizing this resistance against Israel? You mean attacking Jews, or at least making them really, really uncomfortable. That's what you mean. So that's what she's pointing out, that you have these calls on college campuses, and the campuses are doing nothing about it. This is some of the speech that campuses are saying, hey, they've got freedom of expression. Of course, they can call for globalizing intifada, which means going after Jews, targeting Jews globally, not just in Israel.
Type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
And this president of Harvard, she keeps saying, it's personally abhorrent to me, but she won't say, no, it's not allowed. She'll say, yeah, it's personally abhorrent to me. Check this out.
Hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
And there have been multiple marches at Harvard with students chanting, quote, there is only one solution, intifada revolution, and, quote, globalize the intifada. Globalize. Is that correct?
I've heard that thoughtless, reckless, and hateful language on our campus, yes.
So based upon your testimony, you understand that this call for intifada is to commit genocide against the Jewish people in Israel and globally, correct?
That's what it is.
I will say again, that type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
This is my concern. It reminds me of the Dawa guys who will say some words and people will think they're actually responding when they're just being slimy and deceptive. She's being asked, is this against your policy? Would you actually punish students for calling for genocide against Jews or for calling for armed resistance and armed fighting against Jews globally? Would you punish a student for it? Well, personally, I don't like it. We're not asking about your freaking feelings, lady. We're not
Yeah.
asking what your
Nobody
feelings
cares
are.
about your personal opinion here.
But she keeps coming back. I personally would find that a bit on the distasteful side. So I hope that answers your question. It doesn't answer the question at all.
I also like vanilla ice cream, by the way.
All right, let's see.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Did you hear that? It's at odds with the value. Is it against the code of conduct? In other words, are you in trouble? It's against our values and my feelings. This is just, my goodness, like she walked in prepared. I'll be prepared to say things that will sound good to people who are listening. Oh yeah, she's celebrating freedom of expression. And my goodness, all right, she said she finds calls for genocide distasteful and abhorrent. You see, okay, she's on the right page. Not what's being asked and not what everyone's concern is. We're not no one cares if the president of the university sees people calling for genocide and says, yeah, I'm not a big fan, but they can do what they want. The issue is, are they allowed to do that?
Wouldn't this be considered doublespeak? What she's doing here,
Yeah,
which is like she's giving responses that are deliberately unclear and vague, and can be reinterpreted in any way to evade the actual, point here. That's the,
and if you're looking at, okay, you're the president of Harvard. You obviously are intelligent. You know what they're about to ask you. You know what you're being brought in for. And the fact that these are the responses that you've decided to give. Hey, is this in alignment with the code of conduct of the university? Well, our values are, and my personal feelings. Wow, this is wild stuff. All right.
Can you
But
not
our
say here that it is
values
against the
also-
code of conduct at Harvard?
We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful.
Calling for genocide. We embrace freedom of expression with calls for genocide against Jews.
It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment.
Does that speech not?
Did you catch that? It's when it crosses the line into conduct and action. If you're actually,
what in the world does that even mean? Does that mean we allow free expression, including calls for actual genocide, until the genocide is actually committed. After it's done, after it's all said and done, and the massacre happens, then of course, we will oppose it. We will never allow it.
Yeah, and that's man. Yeah, if you. And we'll see this as we go through some of these clips, but that is the actual position of at least a couple of these presidents of universities. It wouldn't actually have to be genocide, but you have to actually be doing something like against a specific individual, like hurting a specific Jewish student or something like that. That's when you're crossing the line. That's when you're crossing the line over into your conduct. As long as you're just saying, hey, we need to wipe out Jews and wipe out Israel and have armed resistance globally against Jews. As long as you're just saying it, but you're not actually doing it, you're good to go. Because we respect freedom of expression, unless it was any other issue besides Jews, and then we would stop it.
Yeah, then
That violates our policies against bullying, harassment.
Does that speech
and
not
intimidation.
cross that barrier? Does that speech not call for the genocide of Jews and the elimination of Israel?
When
You
that speech-
testify that you understand that is the definition of intifada. Is that speech
speech-
according to the code of conduct or not?
We embrace a commitment to free expression and give
My
a wide berth to
goodness.
free
Gee,
expression,
wow,
even
man.
of views that are objectionable.
This is
You and I
you have people always say about politicians that they would give these answers. Okay, I guess she's technically
This
also
woman is a politician. If she
Yeah.
loses her job at Harvard because of all the donors, all the Jewish donors she's going to lose over this stuff. If she loses her job, my goodness, lady, run for Congress. You'd do a bang up job. I mean, guys, think about this, because when an American hears, I'm devoted to freedom of expression, we think, oh, great. Listen, but what she's answering is, hey, I asked you whether calling for genocide against Jews is against the code of conduct. You said, oh, well, I find it personally abhorrent and it goes against our values, but okay, does it go against the code of conduct? Does it go?
Wow.
Does it? And she's
Our
like,
values?
what? Yeah, she goes, once it crosses the line into conduct, and the lady says, wait, do the calls for genocide cross the line that you're talking about? Well, we believe in giving freedom of expression the widest possible berth. Wait, that's what she's answering. When she says freedom of expression, she means freedom of expression to call for genocide until your words actually cross over into action where you're actually doing it. This is nuts, man.
I'm sorry, but I just can't imagine, like, if the same situation took place today, and if the victims or those targeted were Muslims, if they were Arabs, if they were even I don't know, even black people or other people, this would it would never even get to this, and they would never sit there and just be like,
yeah, you wouldn't need a congressional hearing about that, right?
But it's just like when it comes to Jews nowadays, it's while always talking about how the Jews were victimized, they are just treating Jews like they're treating the average white person, basically. And you can say whatever you want about white people, you can say whatever you want about Christians, and you can also say whatever you want about or you can also say whatever you want about Jews now, because they are basically also white. So it doesn't matter if you call for their genocide. It only matters in movies. But it doesn't matter in real life.
This is nuts.
No, that's not the case. You were aware that Harvard ranked dead last when it came to free speech. Are you not aware of that report?
As I observed earlier, I reject that characterization.
It's the data shows it's true.
They had all these criteria listing, and Harvard ranks dead last in freedom of expression on campus. And so all of a sudden, hey, if we're calling for genocide against Jews, is that allowed? Well, we have such a high view of freedom of expression here in our university that is ranked dead last among universities. My goodness. All right.
And isn't it true that Harvard previously rescinded multiple offers of admissions for applicants and accepted freshmen for sharing offensive memes, racist statements, sometimes as young as 16 years old? Did Harvard not rescind those offers of admission?
So basically people are accepted to Harvard, and then they find a tweet or a meme that was shared by a student when he was a teenager, and they say, hey, you can't come here anymore. But so you can't share an offensive meme when you're a teenager. You're not allowed to go to Harvard, but you can go to Harvard and be calling for Jews to be exterminated.
That long predates my time as president.
But you understand that Harvard made that decision to rescind those offers of admission.
I have no reason to contradict the facts as you present them.
Correct, because it's a fact. You're also aware that a Winthrop House faculty dean was let go over who he chose to legally represent, correct? That was while you were dean.
That is an incorrect characterization of what transpired.
What's the characterization?
I'm not going to get into details about a personnel matter.
Well, let me ask you this. Will admissions offers be rescinded or any disciplinary action be taken against students or applicants who say, from the river to the sea or Intifada, advocating for the murder of Jews?
As I've said, that type of hateful, reckless, offensive speech is personally abhorrent to me.
Today that no action will be taken. What action will be taken?
When speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies,
look, she's actually
including policies against bullying, harassment, or intimidation, we take action, and we have robust disciplinary processes that allow us to hold individuals accountable.
What action has been taken against students who are harassing and calling for the genocide of Jews on Harvard's campus?
I can assure you we have robust
what actions have been taken? I'm not asking
actions underway.
I'm asking what
this whole thing should be called how to answer without answering.
Actions have been taken against those students.
Given students' rights to privacy and our obligations under FERPA, I will not say more about any specific cases other than to reiterate that processes are ongoing.
Pretty sure she doesn't have to name people, right? She just has to say.
Yeah, you
certain
could
things
say,
that
yeah,
they
there
do.
were 3 students who were calling for genocide, and we kicked them out of the university, or we made them attend some counseling or something like that, or some training. We did something.
Or we
But
gave them
no.
awards.
Yeah, her basically her saying, "Oh, I can't. I'm not gonna give specifics." That's her way of saying, "No, we don't do anything." Period.
Yeah.
You know what the number one hate crime in America is?
I know that over the last couple of months, there's
ahead.
been an alarming rise of anti-Semitism,
That's
which
not the
I
question.
understand is
not the
the
question.
critical topic that we are here to discuss.
That's
That's not
correct.
the question.
It is anti-Jewish
That's not
hate
even the
crimes.
question. It's not even the
And
question.
Harvard ranks
that's
the
question.
lowest when it
That's
comes
the
to
answer.
protecting Jewish students. This is why I've called for your resignation, and your testimony today, not being able to answer with moral clarity, speaks volumes. I yield back.
Yeah, I mean, think about that.
Jews are the number one
Yeah.
target in hate crimes.
Yeah, and
That's
so
the-
I mean,
that's
think
the
about the point she's making here. Hey, Jews are already, before you say there's this recent there's this recent increase in anti-Semitism on campuses. Even before that, Jews are the biggest targets. And so Jews are the biggest targets already, and you guys are letting it escalate and get even worse on your campus, and you're acknowledging you won't do anything about it unless someone actually starts committing genocide. Then you got a problem with it. So notice the point. It's Jews are already being attacked. Jews are already being attacked in different places, and it's being encouraged at your university. And you're saying, well, as long as the student who's calling for genocide isn't actually doing it, then there's no problem, even though other people are actually targeting Jews. That is the president of Harvard University being brought before Congress to explain how Harvard University is dealing with all of these complaints by Jewish students about how they're being harassed and how people are calling for their annihilation, and how they're being told that Jews deserve to be massacred like they were on October 7th. And so Harvard, MIT, Penn, they do nothing about this. And so it actually comes before Congress for them to clarify why they're not doing anything. And the response is, well, as long as no one's actually genociding these Jews, who are we to complain? We respect freedom of expression in this case only. Let's see. Knows Too Much says, hypocrite leftists who claim to be against imperialism doesn't seem to ever have a problem with Arabic Islamic imperialism. Yeah, no, there's no coherence to the positions. It doesn't even stem from like these students having some particular ideology. They're just programmed. Here's the thing. Here are the things you're supposed to be outraged about. Here are the things that you keep your mouth shut about permanently. If you don't, then if you do the wrong thing, if you do something that we don't tell you to do, then you're expelled from our group, and we'll attack you too.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment. Yes.
I am asking specifically
these people
calling
just-
for the genocide of Jews.
Yeah, it's almost like they collaborated, right? Like, let's all be on the
Yeah.
same page. We're all going to go and say, hey, we have a high, we really love freedom of expression. So if you're just calling for genocide, that's fine. But if you start doing the genocide, that's a problem. I think she asks her that. I think she says, what do you mean conduct? Like actually doing the genocide? I think that's what she does here. Let me back up.
Did these presidents like sit together and think, okay, guys, stick to the script?
How are we going to spin this? How are we going to spin this? I know. Let's all say we're all about freedom of expression. They'll fall for that, won't they?
It's ridiculous, man.
Can be harassment. Yes.
I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is
No.
a context-dependent decision,
Oh
Congresswoman.
It's
my
a
goodness. There we go. That's where the context came in. So that's the second thing. So one, all the presidents are saying it's about when the speech crosses over into conduct. Now she tosses in when she's asked specifically, okay, so calling for genocide, that would be against it? No, it's a context dependent. Now, guys, when someone says it depends on the context, notice what that means. It means there is, according to the president of the University of Pennsylvania, there are contexts in which you can call for genocide against Jews on college campuses, and it's perfectly acceptable. And there's another context where it wouldn't be acceptable, and you get in trouble for it. The thing is, they've explained what the context is in which it wouldn't be allowed, and that's where you're actually doing something to a student, or you're actually starting a genocide. That's when it's not allowed. But it depends on the context. If you're just saying it, death to Israel, death to Jews, exterminate the Jews, genocide, global intifada, that's okay. If you actually start doing it, then we got a problem. Let me back this up here because this is nuts, man. This is absolutely insane. These are the people who run the universities that everyone is sending their kids to.
It's a context-dependent decision,
Context
Congresswoman.
dependent.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If it
Look at her grinning.
Yes or no?
If the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer.
More. Last chance.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can
Why
be
is she
harassment.
grinning?
The answer.
Yeah, and
Why in the world is she grinning?
She's
This is
grinning.
disgusting, man.
And she said, notice what she says, it can be harassment. It can be in certain conduct, in certain contexts where the speech crosses over into something you're actually doing.
Why in the world would she be grinning? This is just it makes you
That's what's creepy, right? like this grin she's got on her. As long as it's in the right context, as long as you're calling to slaughter the Jews in the right context. But yeah, if someone actually started killing Jews, yeah, we would intervene. We would definitely intervene. We wouldn't allow that. Yeah, not yet. Give us another 5 years. Sicko. People are nuts, man. I mean, this is like awful. In fact, I think this congresswoman, she was speaking afterwards, like on a news channel or something like this. She was saying she was shocked, saying she was shocked at the responses they were given, and she said this is the worst thing she's ever seen at these hearings. She said, I've never seen anything like this. You got professors say, oh, context dependent on whether you can call for genocide and so on. Jeff says during the Holocaust, pastors kept silent. I will not be in that category. I've got several hundred people each week. I let no stand up for the Jews. And by the way, that's actually, I haven't talked about this, but that's part of my reasoning. It's a kind of sense of like communal guilt. Like if let's suppose my grandfather like killed your grandfather and it screwed up your entire family and it's messed up your life and stuff like that. If I can actually do something to fix what my grandfather did to your family and how it affected your family and so on, I think that's something I should actually do. Well, if Christians in the past didn't stand up for Jews when people were slaughtering them, okay, then you need to be aware of that. And if you say, okay, previous generations of Christians really screwed up. Okay, well, that means you need to do whatever you can to not make that same mistake now. Sid Dave says Harvard is slowly becoming a madrasa. Yep. And it guys, you just wonder. See, you shouldn't just focus on what's in front of you right now. It's the trajectory, as Hijab would say. It's the trajectory. Where are things heading, right? If you're saying, oh, look how rapidly things shifted and how quickly it became totally acceptable to call for genocide on college campuses. Look how quickly that happened. Okay, what's the direction things are heading? Because that's why you need to take steps to make sure this doesn't get worse. Because if things can change that quickly, there's not a lot standing in the way of things getting worse, except you. I think this is the guy who comes off and he's really, really nice, and he just makes an awesome point by the end. But let's see. I don't remember where he went with this, but I remember thinking, this guy's kind of nice and slow and calm. And let's see.
Some words in your opening statement where you said, cure for anti-Semitism is knowledge. I would go where angels fear to tread and suggest that it might be better going back to the original motto idea for Harvard, which was Veritas, truth, that the cure for anti-Semitism is not simply knowledge, it's truth. Knowledge puffs up.
Oh, he quoted the Bible. That was a Christian dog whistle there.
That was based.
So knowledge puffs up.
Sometimes based upon falsehoods.
See, he said based.
I think that's what we're facing right now in the climate on campuses, is that we're missing the fact of truth and allowing, under the guise of free speech, knowledge that isn't true to be exhibited in actions as well. So President Gay, in the weeks since October 7th, and again in your testimony, you have said that Harvard's commitment to free speech extends to views that are objectionable or outrageous. Are you aware that Harvard is ranked dead last on the 2024 Foundation of Individual Rights and Expression scorecard of universities on freedom of speech?
Okay, so this is before the other congresswoman brought it up. He brings it up. Harvard is dead last when it comes to freedom of expression, and yet Harvard is using its commitment to freedom of expression as the justification for allowing calls for genocide against Jews. So he brings us up, and we can have her response here.
That's pretty big.
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. Respectfully, I disagree with that perspective as represented in the report that you cited. I
disagree with the report.
Don't think it's an accurate representation of how Harvard treats speech on campus. We are committed to free expression and to making space for a wide range of views and perspectives on our campus.
With all due respect, let me move on a bit.
Bedrock.
I would expect that you wouldn't agree with that. I understand that. And I would expect that the University of Penn, the same would be true, that you wouldn't agree that you're second to last.
Whoa! Did you hear that? Hey, P, you hear that?
Yes.
He goes, he says, I would expect you wouldn't agree with that, and I would expect the president of Penn not to agree with the fact that you're second to last. So those are the two worst universities in the nation, Harvard and Penn, in terms of freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And this is studied by, seeing what happens to students and what happens to professors and so on. And so these guys are dead last. Another one saying, well, of course, the reason you could call for genocide is because of our great commitment to freedom of expression, you liars.
That same scorecard. But President Gay, did you know that 70% of Harvard students say that shouting down a speaker is acceptable?
70%.
That is not okay.
I appreciate that. It seems that perhaps Harvard's commitment to free speech is pretty selective. As you are no doubt aware, prominent alumnus Bill Ackman tweeted you a letter on Sunday, and in that letter, and I have that tweet, I guess that's the beauty of social media, you can get those things.
Oh, is that how it works? It's good he's explaining the benefits of social media to us. Back in my day, we had the Pony Express. Then we came out with the Telegram. And now we've got social media. Anyway.
In that letter, he highlighted 2 cases of Harvard faculty members who were canceled because of views deemed too controversial for your campus. Tyler J. Vanderweel was deemed guilty for those crimes related to his views on marriage and abortion. And then Carol Hoven, an evolutionary biologist, was forced to resign because she stated that a person's sex is biological and binary. Mr. Ackerman's letter also included quotes from a number of faculty highlighting the culture of fear that pervades Harvard's campus for those with views out of step with campus orthodoxy. And so, President Gay, in what world is a call for violence against Jews protected speech,
Wow.
but a belief that sex is biological and binary isn't?
That's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah.
On what planet? On what planet? So suppose you're saying you're committed to freedom of speech. On what planet is calling for genocide against Jews, that's protected, but me saying, hey, I think I think gender is this or that, that's not, and you have to be crushed.
Thank you for your question. So from the moment that our students arrive on campus, whether it is to begin their Harvard journey as an undergraduate or at one of the professional schools, the message to them is clear, that we are an inclusive community, but one deeply committed to free expression. And that means that we have expectations that that right is exercised mindfully and with empathy towards others.
Even if you're calling for genocide.
We reinforce that during their time at Harvard by helping them build the skills that allow them to engage in constructive dialogue, even on the most complex and divisive issues. Because what we seek is not simply free expression, but the reasoned dialogue that leads to truth and discovery, and that does the work of moving us all.
Look, she picked up on this guy saying, I think truth is what's important. It's, yes, we're geared towards fostering a community where we work towards truth. My goodness, man.
Free expression, but the reasoned dialogue that leads to truth and discovery, and that does the work of moving us all forward. We don't always get it right, and our students don't always get it right. And when they transgress, they're held accountable.
As well, don't they? Your professors come under that as well, don't they?
Absolutely.
And so for Professor Vanderweel and Hoven, that didn't work for them. The free expression of views, at the very least, views, whether fact or truth, I guess we'll leave that to understanding, but nonetheless, they were removed from their positions. And I think that sends a message in this case with Jewish students, that they're of less importance. I yield back.
Burn. Sends a message.
Jeez.
When I say, hey, you can't criticize that person's view or we'll destroy you, but you can call for the extermination of Jews, you're making it sound like you just don't care about Jews.
That was pretty. He should have dropped his mic there.
He should have. That would have been awesome, wouldn't it? I yelled back. Yeah. Boom, dropped it.
Yeah.
With an explosion sound. All right, guys. So again, there's a lot of those clips. There are a lot of those clips. Good to get some of that information and share it, because this is really creepy stuff. And guess what? The outrage, actually people pointing out this stuff, does make a difference, right? Because people finding out about this stuff, that does affect the donors and so on. And then the donors, they get to call some shots on who actually runs these universities. So it would really be awesome for these people to just lose their jobs, and then other people get put into place who are not going to put up with this nonsense.
Yeah.
And that, matter of fact, that should be a condition for anyone who's donating to these universities. Hey, I am not sending you a penny Harvard. I'm not sending you a penny University of Pennsylvania. I'm not sending you a penny MIT until you take some steps to end this nonsense here. All right, we'll go with a few super chats and then we'll head out. What could be the end goal for these universities to not condemn this kind of talk? Context. So what's the end goal? Well, notice if they say, so the question is, why would they not just condemn it and say, hey, they're being asked how this violates their policies. So here's the issue. If they say, yes, it goes against our policies to call for genocide. And so the question is, why are you allowing them to do it? So the issue is, why haven't you done anything? And so the issue that's being brought up to them is, of course, why haven't you done anything if it's against your policies? Is it against your policies? The moment they say it's against their policies, then why aren't you enforcing your policies? And so they have to explain why they're not enforcing why they would have to explain why they're not enforcing their policies. And so they took the short route. Well, it's not really against our policies unless it crosses over into action. So they're looking for a way to justify not taking action against people who are calling for genocide.
Yeah.
And they went with what they thought would be most appealing to the American people. Just say, hey, it's about freedom of expression. That's why we're doing it, which they sound like a bunch of idiots when these universities, which, as was pointed out, there's number 1 and number 2 in the university. I mean, in the entire university system for being worst at allowing freedom of expression on their campuses. So total hypocrisy. No one's buying any of it. They thought it might work. It didn't. And now they're embarrassed. And it would not surprise me for all of these people to lose their jobs, because the universities, the board of trustees, all these guys are going to have to, hundreds of millions of dollars in funding is more important to them than whoever is president at their university. Prash here says, I read online that India is the most pro-Israel country on earth. I have seen tons and tons of Hindus on Twitter saying they support Israel. Most pro-Israel content on Twitter is coming from India. Any guesses why? Yeah, common enemy. They understand it. Like in fact, if anyone there are certain groups of Christians who understand it. Most Christians do not understand it. But yeah, Hindus understand what it's like to be sort of surrounded by people who want to completely annihilate and subjugate you and so on. Mm-hmm. So they get it. What are good sources that debunk anti-Jew hatred? It's all over the place, man.
Just listen to your heart.
Listen to your heart.
Yeah.
Release the good. That's what you do. All right, everyone. So we'll catch you all tomorrow on AP's channel. It will be dope. In the meantime, since we're talking about songs and musical preferences, lead you out with the greatest song of all time.
Ain't gonna follow no child molester, sex offender, private pretender. Ain't gonna follow no child molester.
Islam's not for me. Islam's not for me.
Islam's
not for me.